My name is Melanie Pratt. I'm 34 years old, and I used to believe that if you worked hard, stayed kind, and did everything right, life would eventually reward you. I clung to that belief like a lifeline until the day it all came crashing down. I still remember the morning it started. The sun was out, but it felt cold. Too quiet. I was making pancakes for my daughter. Lily, she was 6 then when I heard a knock at the door. It was my landlord, a man I'd barely spoken to in 3 years. He handed me a folded letter with a casual, almost apologetic smile. "The building's been sold," he said. "You've got 2 weeks." 2 weeks. 14 days to figure out where we would live, what we would eat, how I would keep Lily in school. I was working 2 part-time jobs, one cleaning offices at night, another at a daycare during the day. I barely made enough to cover rent, food, and gas. I didn't have savings. I didn't have time to prepare. And I sure as hell didn't have a backup plan. I tried to stay calm for Lily. I kept the same bedtime routine, tucked her in with stories and forehead kisses, whispered that everything was going to be okay. But the moment she fell asleep, I'd cry into a pillow to muffle the sound. My heart beat so loud at night, I thought it might burst from fear. I made calls. So many calls. Friends, co-workers, my older sister, whom I hadn't spoken to much in years, but who had a spare room. No one had space or time or energy to help. Most of them didn't call back at all. I told myself it was pride that kept me from begging harder, but the truth is I was terrified of hearing no again. Each rejection chipped away at something inside me. The final week in the apartment, I couldn't even look at the walls. They seemed to stare back at me, as if they knew I was about to lose everything. I packed what I could into garbage bags and boxes. Lily thought we were going on a vacation. "Do I get to bring my stuffed turtle?" she asked, her eyes shining. I told her yes, of course. I couldn't tell her the truth. On the day we left, I sat in the car for hours, parked on the side of a grocery store lot. I didn't know where to go. The engine was off, and the silence felt heavy. Lily played with a coloring book in the back seat, humming quietly. I stared at the steering wheel, gripping it like it was the only thing holding me to earth. That's when it hit me we were officially homeless. Just 2 people, a car, and the city that kept moving like nothing had happened. You think homelessness is a single moment, a dramatic fall, but it's slower, more suffocating than that. It's 1,000 small moments stacked on top of each other: the eviction notice, the unanswered calls, the car that becomes your shelter. It's the way people stop meeting your eyes when you explain your situation. The way you start to believe maybe it is your fault. That first night in the car, I didn't sleep. I sat upright, hand on the door, watching shadows pass under streetlights. I kept one eye on Lily and the other on the world outside, feeling like a ghost in a life I used to own. The fear was constant, but the shame was worse. I had failed my daughter. I had done everything I could, and it still wasn't enough. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. Somewhere under the fear, I made a quiet vow I would not let this be the end of our story. I didn't know how I'd do it. I didn't know who, if anyone, would help. But I promised Lily and myself that I'd fight every single day until we were safe again. That was the day my world collapsed, but it was also the day I began to rebuild. The first time I admitted to myself that I was homeless, I was parked behind a 24-hour pharmacy, pretending to read a magazine while Lily napped in the back seat. I was sipping lukewarm coffee from a gas station styrofoam cup, and my phone battery had died hours earlier. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror, hair pulled back in a loose bun, eyes swollen from days without rest, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. I wasn't ready for what homelessness felt like. I thought it would be more dramatic, I guess, a visible fall. But in reality, it creeps in slowly. At first, it's just not having a permanent address, Then it's rationing food. Then it's lying to your daughter about why you're parked in a different lot each night. Then one day, you wake up in the driver's seat of your car and realize you haven't slept in a bed for over a week and that no one has noticed. The first week felt like a daze. I was constantly calculating miles left before I needed gas, how many granola bars I had left, whether I could stretch a $5 bill into 2 meals. I would park near libraries, hospitals, or churches, places that felt safe. Sometimes I'd pretend we were camping. "Isn't this fun?" I'd whisper to Lily as we curled up in blankets in the back seat. She was still too young to understand that this wasn't a game. But I understood, and the weight of that understanding crushed me. What no one tells you is that homelessness strips you of more than shelter. It strips you of identity. You go from being Melanie, the mom, or Melanie, the teacher's aide, to that woman living in her car. People don't look at you the same way. Sometimes they don't look at you at all. The invisibility was the most unexpected part, how easy it is for the world to stop seeing you. I remember walking into a gas station one evening to buy milk for Lily. I hadn't showered in days, and my clothes were wrinkled from sleeping in them. The cashier glanced at me, then at my clothes, and said nothing. But her silence said everything. I felt like I didn't belong anywhere anymore. Not in that store, not in this city, not in my own life. At night, the fear crept in the hardest. Every sound outside the car felt like a threat. I would sleep with one eye open, clutching the steering wheel like it might protect us. I was constantly on edge, half mother, half soldier, trying to be soft for Lily and steel for the world. The emotional whiplash was relentless. One moment. I was holding Lily's hand and listening to her laugh as we walked through a park. The next, I was crying silently in a restroom stall, wondering if this was our new forever. I didn't allow myself to cry in front of her. She needed strength, and I was determined to be her anchor. But inside, I was unraveling. There was one night that nearly broke me. We were parked behind a closed-down grocery store. It was cold, even under all the blankets. And Lily had a slight fever. I had no medicine, no thermometer, no way to comfort her beyond wrapping her in my arms and whispering lullabies. I felt utterly useless. I remember rocking her back and forth, singing softly, trying to convince myself she'd be okay. In that moment, I thought this is how people lose hope. Not in the loud, dramatic moments, but in the quiet ones. When you realize you're powerless to ease your child's pain, when your love feels too small for the size of the struggle, and yet somehow we made it through that night, and the one after, and the one after that. Each morning brought a strange mix of dread and determination. I'd wake up sore and stiff, brush my teeth in public restrooms, wash my face with cold water in gas station sinks, and tell myself, just make it through today. It was survival in its rawest form. But in that survival, something else was born, a kind of raw, unfiltered clarity. I began to see things differently. Small kindnesses, a stranger holding a door, a free sandwich from a volunteer, a smile from someone who didn't look away became lifelines. I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of my story. That maybe I was being broken down to be rebuilt stronger. Still, the shock of it all stayed with me. I had gone from a woman with a routine, a home, and dreams for her daughter to someone measuring life in gallons of gas and hours of safety. But despite the despair, despite the fear, I still had Lily's hand in mine, and that alone was enough to keep me moving. I used to believe that family meant something unshakable, that no matter how bad life got, the people who shared your blood would never let you fall too far. I don't believe that anymore. The night I made the call, I was running out of places to park. Most of the quiet lots we'd used the week before were now guarded or posted with signs, "No overnight stays." I'd already been asked to move 3 times that day. Lily was tired. I was beyond exhausted. I remember looking at my phone, fingers shaking, and seeing my sister Rebecca's name in the contacts. We hadn't spoken in months, maybe longer, but at that moment, I felt like a little girl again, just wanting someone to say, "It's okay. Come home." I dialed. The ring felt like it lasted forever. When she answered, her voice was cool, distracted. "Hello." "Becca," I said. My voice cracked before I could even finish her name. She paused. "Melanie." "Yeah." I need help." I whispered. "It's not just me. It's Lily too. We're not safe. We're sleeping in my car. And I don't know where else to go." There was a silence on the other end. I waited for her to jump in, to ask if we were okay, to offer a place to stay, a shower, a couch, anything. But when she finally spoke, her words were slow and heavy. "I'm sorry, Mel. I really am. But I can't get involved. We've got enough going on. You made your choices." My choices. That phrase hit me like a slap. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I couldn't even summon anger, just disbelief. "I'm not asking for much," I said, my voice trembling. "Just a couple nights. Until I find a place, I'll sleep on the floor. Lily can stay in your guest room. I'll clean. I'll cook, please." She let out a breath that sounded more like annoyance than sorrow. "It's not that simple. What if something happens? I've got kids. A mortgage. I can't risk it." "Risk it?" As if we were a danger. As if my 6-year-old daughter was a threat to her suburban peace. I didn't remember hanging up. I just remember staring at the screen long after it had gone dark, like it might light back up again and she'd call to say she changed her mind. But it never did. I put the phone down gently, like something fragile had just shattered inside me. And it had. That was the moment I realized that blood doesn't guarantee love. It doesn't promise safety or shelter or even decency. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to catch you when you fall are the first to let you hit the ground. I didn't cry right away. I didn't have the energy. Instead, I turned around to check on Lily. She was curled up in the back seat with her bear tucked under her chin. Her breathing was soft, peaceful. She didn't know we'd just been rejected by the only family we had left, and I wasn't about to tell her. The next morning, I deleted Rebecca's number, not out of spite, but to protect myself. Every time I looked at her name, it reminded me of that night, of how small and invisible I'd felt, of how love, when conditional, turns into something cruel. That rejection changed me, not instantly but slowly, like frost settling on a window pane. I began to speak less, trust less, expect less. I built walls not to keep people out, but to hold what was left of me together. People talk about betrayal like it's loud and obvious, but it's not always screaming or slamming doors. Sometimes it's a voice you've known your whole life saying quietly, "You're on your own." And when it comes from someone you once shared birthday cakes with, who used to braid your hair and tell you secrets under the covers, that's the kind of wound that doesn't bleed. It just bruises everything. In the weeks that followed, I learned not to look for help where none existed. I stopped calling people from my past. I started leaning harder into strangers, nonprofits, and shelters even when the lines were long and the rules were rigid. Because while family turned away, there were others, people with no reason to care, who did. Looking back, I wish I could say I forgave Rebecca. I wish I could say I understood her reasons. But the truth is, some wounds stay open. You just learn to live around them. What hurt the most wasn't that she said no, it was how easy it seemed for her to do it. No hesitation, no guilt, just a clean break. That night didn't just mark the loss of shelter, it marked the death of an illusion that family is forever. And once that illusion shattered, something colder took its place of resolve. From that point on, I stopped waiting for anyone to rescue me. If I was going to climb out of this, it would be with my own 2 hands. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It just sits inside you, quiet, sharp, and constant, like a sliver of glass lodged beneath the skin. You get used to walking with it, talking with it, even smiling with it, but it never leaves. That's what betrayal felt like for me. After my sister turned us away, something in me shifted. It wasn't immediate, like a dam breaking. It was more like a slow leak of trust, of warmth, of whatever belief I had left in the people I once called family. I wasn't angry at first. I was stunned, and then ashamed, and then hollow. The worst part wasn't just that she said no, it was that she didn't look back. No follow-up call, no how are you doing, not even a text on Lily's birthday. Her silence became its own kind of cruelty, louder, in some ways, than any harsh word could have been. I found myself replaying that phone call over and over in my head, like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. I'd think of different things I could have said. Should I have begged more? Should I have reminded her of the times I watched her kids for free when she was struggling? Would it have mattered? And then there were the deeper questions, the ones I didn't want to say out loud. Was I that easy to discard? Had I done something to deserve this? Am I unlovable? That question haunted me for months. Every rejection at a shelter, every we're at capacity voicemail, every turned back or averted gaze, it all fed into the same dark place. The place inside me where the betrayal had rooted itself and begun to grow. I started doubting everything about myself, not just my ability to mother or survive, but my worth as a human being. When the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally treat your suffering like an inconvenience, it rearranges your entire understanding of what love is or what it isn't. I didn't just feel abandoned. I felt erased. I stopped reaching out. I stopped answering messages from old friends who wanted to catch up but never asked if I was okay. I felt invisible and in a strange, bitter way. It was easier to stay that way than to risk being seen and rejected again. Navigating homelessness without family meant I carried everything, every burden, every decision, every emergency alone. When Lily got sick with the flu, there was no one to call for soup or medicine. When the car battery died one night in freezing temperatures, I sat there holding her in my lap, singing lullabies through chattering teeth, praying the heater would come back on before she woke up crying. There's no manual for how to mother your child when the world has turned its back on you. You just improvise. You make magic out of nothing. You lie with a smile. We're having an adventure, I told her once, when we had to sleep in a church basement with 20 strangers. She smiled. She believed me. That belief kept me going even when I didn't believe in myself. But behind the smile I wore for Lily, I was unraveling. I developed a kind of hyper-awareness, constantly scanning rooms, memorizing exits, keeping a mental inventory of who looked trustworthy and who didn't. I stopped eating regularly. I stopped sleeping deeply. I lived in survival mode, not just physically, but emotionally. Every connection felt like a risk. Every ounce of vulnerability felt dangerous. And yet, in all of that, I discovered something painful but powerful. I could survive betrayal. It hurt like hell. It left scars I'll carry forever. But it didn't kill me. In fact, it sharpened me. I became more selective with my trust. I stopped measuring my worth by who stayed and who walked away. I started finding comfort in the quiet moments of truth I shared with myself when I looked in the mirror and said, "You made it through another day." That became my new love language. Not approval, not validation, just presence. Just persistence. Even now, years later, I still feel the ache of that abandonment. I see a picture of Rebecca's kids on social media, and something tightens in my chest. Not jealousy, not hatred, just a quiet mourning for the family I once imagined we'd always be. But I also see myself now stronger, wiser, more grounded than I've ever been. I see Lily, growing, thriving, laughing with a confidence I fought to preserve. And I realize that while betrayal may have broken something in me, it also forced me to build something stronger in its place. I don't pretend it didn't happen. I carry it with me, always. But I also carry this truth. Surviving betrayal doesn't mean forgetting it. It means choosing not to be defined by it. There's a kind of survival you enter when you know no one is coming. It's different from panic. Panic is loud and frantic and temporary. But this was quiet, methodical, a slow burning awareness that every step, every decision, every breath had to come from me alone. After the shock faded, after the betrayal hardened into resolve, I slipped into a routine. Not the kind of routine I used to know: mornings with breakfast, school drop-offs, a paycheck every Friday. No, this was a new kind of rhythm, one built around scarcity and vigilance. Our car became the center of our lives. It was storage, shelter, dining room, nursery. I'd keep it clean not just out of pride, but necessity. Clutter made it harder to sleep. Chaos meant we were one lost object away from disaster. A missing phone charger could be the difference between finding an open shelter or spending another night in the cold. I learned quickly where to park safely. Some grocery store lots were quiet enough if you kept the lights off. Hospital parking decks were better; they had security, but they also had people coming and going all night, so no one really noticed one more tired mom in a worn-down sedan. And churches? Oh, God bless the churches that didn't chase us away. Sometimes I'd just park under the cross, hoping heaven was listening. Our morning started early before the sun. I'd slip out of the car, stretch stiff limbs, and wipe the fog from the windshield while Lily still slept. We'd drive to the nearest gas station, where I'd clean us up in the bathroom, brushing her hair under flickering fluorescent lights, washing our faces with paper towels and hand soap, trying to make it look like we belonged wherever we were headed next. Sometimes I'd take her to the library just to warm up. I'd sit at a computer pretending to apply for jobs again while she read books about princesses and planets. She never complained. Never asked why we didn't have a kitchen anymore. Maybe she understood more than I gave her credit for. Maybe she just trusted me enough to believe I was doing my best. Food came from food banks or fast food dollar menus when I had a little extra. I learned how to stretch one meal into 2 days. I skipped a lot of dinners. There were times when my stomach ached from hunger, but I'd smile and tell Lily I'd already eaten. "Mommy's just not hungry right now," I'd say, and she'd nod like that made perfect sense. But the hardest part wasn't hunger. It wasn't even the cold nights or the endless rejection from shelter lines. It was pretending to be okay. Every single day. You can't fall apart in front of your child. You can't show them that you're scared or exhausted or that your hope is running on fumes. So I performed. I smiled. I made up bedtime stories. I sang in the car. I celebrated the small things: free fruit from a food pantry, a clean bathroom, a warm day in January. But behind the curtain, I was holding it together with threadbare faith. Without a safety net, there's no margin for error. A flat tire becomes a crisis. A missed shift means no gas for the week. When Lily caught a stomach bug, I cried in a CVS parking lot because I couldn't afford both Pedialyte and gas. I chose the Pedialyte. And yet, somehow, I kept going. I started learning about resources I never knew existed. A woman at the soup kitchen handed me a flyer for a mobile clinic. Another mother at the shelter showed me how to sign up for a free voicemail service so employers could call back even if I didn't have a phone plan. Piece by piece, I built a fragile network not made of family, but of strangers whose kindness reminded me I wasn't entirely invisible. There were days I wanted to give up. Days I pulled the blanket over my head and pretended I didn't exist, but Lily's little hand would find mine, or her voice would say, "Mama, I love you," and that would be enough to get me moving again. I didn't survive because I had a plan. I survived because I refused to give up. When there's no one to catch you, you learn to land on your own 2 feet. It's brutal. It's unfair. But it also shows you what you're made of. And I was made of more than I ever imagined. They say resilience is about bouncing back. But for me, it was about crawling forward inch by inch when I had nothing left to give but breath and grit. I don't remember the exact day everything started to shift, but I remember the feeling. It was subtle, like a flicker of light in a long tunnel. I had spent weeks barely functioning, doing just enough to keep Lily safe and fed, but inside, I was exhausted, numb, depleted. Then one afternoon at a church food bank, I met Carla. She was a volunteer, late 40s, denim jacket, fierce eyes softened by kindness. I don't know what she saw in me. Maybe it was the way I clutched Lily's hand like I was afraid to let go. Maybe it was the way I avoided eye contact, ashamed of needing help again. Whatever it was. She approached gently and said, "I know it's hard, but there are programs that can help you breathe again." She handed me a wrinkled pamphlet for a transitional housing center across town. I didn't expect much. I'd been turned away so many times before. But something in her voice, some thread of hope, made me go. The intake worker at the shelter was firm, but not cold. She looked me in the eyes, asked questions, actually listened. They had a spot, a real bed, a lock on the door, access to a case manager, job training, even a mailing address. I wanted to cry right there at the intake desk. Not because it solved everything, but because it was the first time in months someone said, "We've got room." Those first few nights in the shelter, I slept like I hadn't in ages. The mattress was thin, the room was small, but I didn't have to keep one eye open anymore. Lily had a pillow again. I could breathe. With stability came momentum. I signed up for every class they offered: budgeting, resume writing, conflict resolution. I showed up early, stayed late, took notes like my life depended on it. Because it did. I applied for dozens of jobs. Most never called back. But eventually, one did part-time housekeeping at a hospital. Not glamorous, but steady. And it came with something priceless: dignity. Working gave me more than a paycheck. It gave me purpose. I was exhausted at the end of each shift, but it was the good kind of tired, the kind that says, "You did something today." I also started building my own quiet army. Women in the shelter who shared food and stories. A counselor named Marisol who saw past my defenses and helped me untangle the trauma I hadn't dared speak aloud. A retired teacher who came in once a week to read to the kids while the moms went to job interviews. None of them owed me anything, but they showed up anyway. And their belief in me, gentle, steady, never forced, helped me begin to believe in myself again. And then there was Lily, my anchor, my reason. Her laugh, her drawings taped to the shelter wall, the way she held my face in her hands and said, "You're the best mommy in the world." She didn't know the battles I was fighting. She just knew I was still standing. That was enough for her. So I decided it would be enough for me too. The road was long and far from smooth. There were setbacks, missed buses, paperwork delays, rejection letters. There were moments when I felt like I was climbing a hill with no summit, but I kept showing up. Every single day. I stopped waiting for miracles and started creating routine. I learned to celebrate small victories, finding affordable childcare, passing a background check, saving $50 without touching it. Each win, no matter how small, reminded me that I was building something real. I used to think strength looked like never breaking. But now I know strength is breaking and getting back up anyway. It's asking for help when you'd rather disappear. It's choosing to keep going when your heart is heavy and your feet are tired. I still had a long way to go, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't surviving, I was rebuilding. And I wasn't doing it because someone rescued me. I was doing it because I decided I was worth saving. People like to talk about recovery as if it's a straight line, a clear upward path from darkness into light. But that's not what it looked like for me. My recovery was a crooked road full of potholes, backslides, and moments where I wasn't sure I was healing at all. There were days when it felt more like survival in disguise, just with better lighting. After moving into transitional housing, things didn't magically get better, they got quieter. And that quiet was almost more unsettling than the chaos. When you're in survival mode, you don't have time to feel. But once the immediate danger passed, all the things I had buried, fear, grief, humiliation, started to surface. It was like my body remembered everything my mind had been too busy to process. I had flashbacks of nights in the car, of clutching Lily to my chest while pretending we were camping so she wouldn't hear my stomach growl. I'd wake up in a panic sometimes, disoriented, expecting to be in that driver's seat with frost on the windows. Even though we had a roof over our heads now, part of me never stopped listening for threats. My guard was always halfway up. The hardest part wasn't rebuilding my finances, it was learning how to feel safe again, how to trust people, how to trust myself. I remember my first real apartment after the shelter. It was small, with creaky floors and peeling paint, but it had a door I could lock, a bathroom that was ours alone, and a kitchen where I could cook a full meal. Lily picked the corner near the window for her bed and called it her Princess Tower. I cried the night we moved in, not because I was happy, though I was, but because I realized how long I had lived without the basic things people take for granted. Still, healing wasn't linear. Some days I'd feel proud of how far I'd come working full-time, paying bills on time, packing Lily's lunches with little notes that said I love you. Other days I'd be thrown back into sadness out of nowhere, just seeing a mother hug her daughter at the grocery store or overhearing someone talk about their sister's birthday plans. The truth is, the emotional scars from being abandoned never completely fade. I never stopped wondering why my family turned away. I never stopped replaying that phone call with my sister in my head, as if I might one day change the ending. And I'll be honest, holidays were the worst. The loneliness hit harder during those times. Social media became a landmine. Photos of big family dinners, smiling siblings, mothers surrounded by gifts, it felt like a reminder of what we didn't have. I wanted to forgive. I even told myself I had. But the hurt lingered in strange ways in how I hesitated to trust people who offered kindness, and how I flinched every time someone said, "You should call your family." They didn't know that those phone calls stopped mattering a long time ago. But through it all, Lily kept me grounded. She flourished in ways that astounded me. Her teacher said she was kind and imaginative, always willing to help the other kids. Watching her grow into that little person gave me strength I didn't know I had. I wasn't just recovering for myself, I was rebuilding the world she would grow up in. And part of that rebuilding meant facing the truth I was not the same woman I was before everything fell apart. I was stronger, yes, but also softer in some places, more compassionate, less willing to accept surface-level relationships. I valued honesty over convenience, presence over promises. The road to recovery taught me that healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about learning how to carry it differently. Some days, the weight still surprises me. But I've learned to stop apologizing for the pain. It shaped me. It made me more patient, more resilient, more alive. I don't know if I'll ever fully make peace with what happened. But I do know this, I got up every time life knocked me down. I found dignity in the ashes. I built a home out of pieces people threw away. And I did it all with a little girl by my side who never stopped believing in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself. That's what recovery looks like, not perfection, but persistence. Not forgetting, but growing. And I'm still on that road, still walking, still healing. But now, I'm doing it with my head held high. Hope didn't come to me all at once. It didn't burst through the clouds like sunlight or arrive wrapped in some grand, sweeping moment. For me, hope arrived in fragments. A kind smile from a stranger. A clean blanket on a shelter bed. A bus ride where Lily fell asleep with her head on my shoulder, and, for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel fear sitting in my chest. I used to think hope was naive, that it belonged to people with safety nets, with family, with savings accounts. But I was wrong. Hope is for the broken too, especially for the broken. Because sometimes hope is all you have left when the rest of the world has moved on. Today, life looks different. I won't pretend everything is perfect. There are still hard days, still triggers that bring the past flooding back, but we have a home now. A modest 2-bedroom apartment with chipped cabinets and a leaky faucet, but it's ours. Lily has her own bed. I have a shelf of books. We even have a calendar on the fridge, something I used to associate with people who had plans and reasons to track time. I now work as a peer counselor at a women's shelter. Every day. I meet women who are where I once was tired, afraid, numb. I look into their eyes and I see pieces of myself reflected back. And every time I share my story, I remind them, you are not broken beyond repair. You are not worthless because life knocked you down. You are still here, and that means something. That's the power of surviving. It turns your scars into stories. It transforms your pain into purpose. When I tell people what I've been through, I sometimes see shock on their faces. They say things like, I never would have guessed. And maybe that's the point. Homelessness doesn't have a uniform. Trauma doesn't always show up in the way you expect. I used to walk through stores with Lily in tow, wearing clean clothes and a tired smile, while living out of our car. No one knew. No one asked. So now, when I meet someone who seems fine, I remember that you can't always see the storm behind someone's eyes. I've learned that healing is as much about being seen as it is about surviving. And now, when I look back on the darkest moments of my life, the betrayal, the silence, the hunger, I carry them with less weight. They no longer define me. They inform me. They've become part of my strength. If you're reading this or listening to my story, and you're in a place that feels impossible, please hear me. You are not alone. I know what it's like to feel invisible, to be met with closed doors and blank stares, to doubt your own worth because the people closest to you disappeared when you needed them most. But I also know there are still good people in the world. There are strangers who will feed you, clothe you, guide you. There are shelters with open beds, volunteers who show up every week, counselors who remember your name. And when the world makes you feel small, they remind you that you still matter. If you're standing in the wreckage, wondering how to begin again, start with something small, a shower, a phone call, one honest breath. That's all it takes to start climbing back. And don't wait for permission to take your life back. No one else is coming to do it for you. But you can. My story didn't end in a car or in the silence of abandonment. It didn't end in fear or despair. It kept going. It's still going. And if there's one thing I've learned through all of it, it's this: survival is a beginning, not a conclusion. What comes after the rebuilding, the rediscovery, the living, that's where the miracle lies. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm thriving on my own terms, in my own time. And every time I tuck Lily into bed, every time I flip the lights off and know we're safe for the night, I whisper a quiet thank you to the people who helped, to the woman I've become, and to the hope that never fully left me. Because even in the darkest places, even when love fails and doors close, hope waits for us to believe in it again. And I did. If there's one thing I've learned from walking through fire, it's this: you never truly know how strong you are until life gives you no other choice. When I lost my home, when family turned their backs, when I was brushing my daughter's hair in a gas station bathroom, it would have been easy to give up. I wanted to, more times than I can count, but I didn't. And the reason I kept going wasn't because I had some master plan or extraordinary strength. I kept going because I chose not to let the darkness be the last word. The first lesson I learned is that your value doesn't disappear just because your circumstances fall apart. Homelessness, poverty, abandonment, they can make you feel like you're nothing, but they don't define who you are. You are not the car you sleep in, or the job you lost, or the people who walked away. You are still worthy. You are still you. And that's enough to start rebuilding from. The second lesson is this: never underestimate the power of small kindness. A warm meal, a stranger looking you in the eye, a pamphlet from a volunteer who actually sees your pain. These moments may seem minor, but to someone in crisis, they are lifelines. So if you ever have the chance to help even a little, do it. You never know what battle someone is fighting quietly. Third, ask for help even when your pride screams not to. I know how hard it is. I know the shame that can come with it. But let me tell you, there is no shame in needing support. We all fall. What matters is having the courage to reach out when you're down, and if no one from your past reaches back, don't give up. Sometimes, the people who help you the most are the ones you haven't even met yet. Lastly, and maybe most importantly, hope is not weakness. Hope is survival. Even if it shows up in the smallest ways, hold on to it. Breathe into it. Let it carry you through the moments when nothing else can. My story isn't just about losing everything, it's about what happens after. The slow rebuild, the quiet healing, the unexpected strength that rises when you think you have nothing left. So if you're struggling right now, hear this. You are not alone. You are not beyond saving. And this chapter is not your ending. Keep going. You are stronger than you know.